Oh,
Good to go.
call the meeting to order, the Finance Committee of CEDC. Everybody's had a chance to review the minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Move on, Finance Committee Charter.
Yes, in your packet is the Finance Committee Charter. You'll recall at the board level, in anticipation of the 2024 annual meeting, we updated the bylaws in the organization and each of the charters for each of the committees. Primarily to ensure that there was conformity in presentation and when you look at this committee's charter, there was nothing substantively that had been changed, as I recall, Andy. And it was just to be sure that, you said someone in Albany is looking at charters and they sit down with all our charters and they all look different. It makes it look like we're not as organized as we could be. So Andy helped us put these back together. So I would recommend, Chairman, if there's no questions, that he approve this for recommendation to the full board for adoption.
Sounds good to me. I've looked at it, everything looks fine. The one question I had was the investment portfolio. So it's called out in the charter, right? The investment portfolio, not for profits, it splits between sometimes the board, there's an investment committee, here it's finance committee.
What we've done so far with investment is the most sophisticated investment we've done is a CD. I don't know that we would ever get into anything but cash.
It never hold anything that long anyway.
I do think that we went for a period of time 6 or 7 years ago where we were bringing in $20,000 a year in interest income, and we came to where we were bringing in $1,000 of interest income, and now we're back to where we're doing pretty well on bank interest income. We're through June we're at 15,500, and we budgeted 13. And I think last year we were still moving up from 7, 8, 9. So the banks have been good to us in that context. So there are no questions.
Any questions on the charter? Okay, great. Entertain a motion to approve. Motion to adopt.
Recommend to the board.
Sure. Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving on. Treasurer's report.
Yes, we're at the 6-month window. I think we continue to remain strong. Our balance sheet is pretty stable in terms of ups and downs. If you look on page 1 of the balance sheet, which is page 8 of your packet, you'll see that our CEDC loan account is down by $139,000, which is evidence of Martha's and Steve's work to get money out on the street. Our operating account balance is down $81,000, and we can take a look at that on a report that's in the packet further along. We're making a profit. We have positive net income. But because we continue to roll all of the interest income from the loan program into the loan program, you get the benefit of it on the bottom line, but you're not grabbing that cash to increase your cash balance. I think we're getting the loan portfolio to a point where we do get a fee from the SBA to manage the SBA account, but we're not taking cash from the CEDC loan fund as an administrative fee. And I do like to keep close to $500,000 in the operating account and in what we call the CEDC reserve. That's a board reserve, and it's not intended to be a reserve account for the loan program. I think sometimes that terminology has made it confusing. But right now we're at about 470. One thing that's not in here is that we didn't get the county's quarterly payment until July. So, the cash balance would have been somewhat higher, but, I do think that we've talked about this before, at what point, while we're continuing to do well, and, I think, the strategy of putting all of the interest from both the SBA account, SBA loan fund and the CEDC loan fund back into the loan program has increased the portfolio, total portfolio from about 2.1 to 3 million over time. But I do think, we want to continue to monitor that. As you look down, you do see the operating account balances and including that reserve account. You then see the what we call the loan loss reserve, LLR. That's the 15% of the outstanding balance of the SBA loans that we are required to keep in a reserve account. And if an SBA loan it goes into default after 3 payments, we have to pay the SBA back. I think, as you know, in some cases, we will buy back that loan out of the CEDC fund, so we don't put the client, pull the plug on the client. But we currently have $268,000 in that account, and currently we owe the SBA $1.3 million. So we are overfunded in that account, but Martha is going to discuss with us today getting committee approval and then full board approval to draw down the remaining portion of $750,000 SBA loan funds that we've been approved for, and then make an application for additional funds for the next tranche. Based on the amount of funds we owe the SBA that they've lent to us at basically 0 or interest, but now as they're coming out of COVID and other and rates are going up, we are going to start to see some interest payments due on the money we borrow from them. But with $1.3 million outstanding loans, it would require us about $200,000 in the reserve account. We have $268,000. But again, we've never taken money out of that, because then when you go to get the next tranche and you have to come up with 15% of $200,000, you have it from the previous funds that are over, as you paid on day one, you have to put the full 15% in. And as you pay that down, you still have 15% of the original number, not 15% of the current balance.
So is it determined if it's overfunded because we have 268 versus 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But what we look at is if we took that and put it somewhere else, and you drew down another 500,000, and you had to come up with $45,000 of SBA money for the next tranche, you'd have to take that out of operating.
Yeah.
And you can't expense it. So I think it's a good plan. Again, it's very conservative. And the other thing is, why we have currently on some of the principal outstanding balance of $2.5 million on both loan funds, we have $2,000 in arrears. So I mean, we're over secured, if you will, or over. But at the same time, you don't know how it. But and we're doing smaller loans. Years ago, we did a $100,000 loan that went bad, and that really made a big. So you can also see that as you go down beyond the loan loss reserve, we then show the revolving loan fund accounts, and we have $350,000 of SBA money right now that we could lend on the street. Martha has a number of loans up for approval this month at the loan committee. And if you go all the way up to the top, you can see that there's $596,000 in the SBA loan fund. I'm working with Brian and our independent accounting consultant firm, RBT, to get those in the same place. So, you could see loan fund, CEDC, SBA, total loan fund. And I think it would also eliminate where there's a place where it says total checkings and savings and then total bank accounts. I mean, it's basically, our other liability or other assets include 3 loans from the Office of Community Renewal for Hudson Valley Creamery, Clock Estates, Return Brewery, and Kleinfeld Farm. There are corresponding entries on the liability side because these are loans that if they continue in business and comply with the terms of the loan through a 5-year period, they become a grant. And previously, and going back, we weren't setting up the liability. And so when you wrote off the asset because it was a grant, by its terms, converted from a loan to a grant, you were taking an expense hit that really distorted your bottom line. Accounts receivable, we do have the technical assistance grant from the SBA. That's always a quarter behind. It's $15,000 more than last year because we had an increase in the amount of the grant from year to year. We then do have accounts receivable from the Hudson IDA, the county broadband account, which I'll come back to in a minute, Columbia Forward, and the Columbia County IDA. And then 2 projects, the Land Conservancy project and La Bella's, both IDA projects where CEDC undertook engaged firms to do studies, and will ultimately get reimbursed from those by the project's developer, whether they go forward or not. So I think, I'm not concerned. We do have $3,500 still owed to us by the county for the appraisal on the Warren Street property. And our total accounts receivable are $124,000, which seems like a high number, but $75,000 of it is the SBA. The $18,000 on broadband is money that we have spent. The county had given us 2 $30,000 grants. We spent $60,000. The board had approved that we do $1,000 a month continual. We continue the agreement with our consultant at $1,000 a month. We just applied yesterday for a $150,000 grant from New York State to continue that. And I've also had some discussions with the chairman of the Board of Supervisors about if there is additional ARPA funds available, how do we look forward to be sure that the work that CEDC has done for the county in broadband follows through to the end. There's somewhere between 700 and 1,000 addresses that still have to be built out. And we've been working closely with the 4 providers, with the state Connect All office, and county's either going to have to get the $150,000 grant to cover this for the next 2 years, or we're going to have the county pick up some of the money, because you can absorb over 18 months $18,000, but it's not something that we can take out of our administrative appropriation from the county, because that's already budgeted for other purposes. I think it's hard when we're getting 460 from the county, and then the 85 from Columbia Forward, and the 90 for the housing, to nickel and dime them. But again, these are projects they've asked us to undertake, and we are in a conversation with the chairman. I did request that we extend Columbia Forward for a year. That program is up at the end of 2024. You may recall that it didn't start until June or July 1 of 2022, but they paid us for the full year of 2022. So when we see deferred revenue as a liability, $42,500 of that is being held. So for us, Columbia Forward doesn't run out until June 30th of 2025, but for the chamber, it runs out at the end of 2024. The deal there for our new board members was it's a $150,000 grant for 3 years. We took $20,000 off the top to administer the program, and we split $130,000 50-50 with the chamber, so that they had the ability, and CEDC had the ability to hire an additional staff person. So I've asked for another year of that, but that would give us a year and a half. I also requested another half year on the $90,000 a year housing grant, and we're a year and a half into that. The reason we limited that ask was to make the other ask look as reasonable, but also part of what we've done and Chris Brown has done in terms of the housing task force is created the Columbia County Land Bank. And we were just awarded $100,000 for 1 year of administrative expense. The idea is that at the end of a year and a half to 2 years, that the land bank would be where the county's housing coordinator would be funded out of, as opposed to the county giving us funds out of either previous ARPA funds which don't exist and general county appropriation. But the county is very pleased with how that program has worked and the work that CEDC and particularly Chris has done. So, but I do want to be able to have sufficient funds available so that Chris is comfortable that the program has never like to be working where you're on a grant without knowing how long the grant's going to be sustained. We do have a land bank meeting today. We're going to request at the board meeting that the board approve entering into a 1-year agreement with the land bank at a $15,000 fee out of the 100 that they have achieved. We need to ramp that up. I don't think you can go in and ask for a full person fee when you're just ramping it up and you're already being paid by the county to coordinate housing. What I would do is defer that income into the housing position fund so that we would have it again in a bucket to support housing, not commingle it with general funds and end up using it for copiers or whatever. That would again give us an additional time period, and whether ultimately the county subsidizes the position by supplementing what is an appropriate fee from the land bank for the services that CEDC would provide, or whether Chris would move completely to the land bank in 2 or 3 years if it was up and running. But we put in for $100,000 and not thinking you would get it all, and they gave it to us all. So it may result in us asking for a somewhat larger portion of the $15,000. $15,000 was based on what we charge the IDAs as a base fee.
Forgive me for not knowing this. So Chris is a CEDC employee.
Yes.
Chris is funded from county funds, by and large. Chris established the land bank. Who has oversight and governance of the land bank?
There's a board, board of Matt Morell is the chairman, supervisors Adams from Canaan and not from Stuyvesant are the representatives from the board of supervisors, and then and there's 7 members. The other 4 members are county employees. Chris Watts from the county attorney's office, Patrice Perry, PJ Keeler, and but it's a county entity that they're going to contract with us, similar to how the IDA contracts with CEDC for administrative services.
Thank you.
When I got to the Center for Economic Growth, we had a 3-year, $500,000 grant to run an incubator at the Waterville Arsenal. And no one had planned on what you did when the grant ran out. And so, I'm continually trying to look out because one, if you're working on a program where it's not an integrated component of that organization's activity and it's funded by an outside source, you're smart enough to know that someday, unless there's a unless the model is revised, where's the money going to come from? So
And the county's funding for Chris's position.
for another year and a half.
Got it.
And I asked for another half year.
Got it.
And on the basis, and I didn't want to go in and ask for, if we have to ask for more after 2 years, at least there's a year of runway.
And structurally, the $100,000 grant that the land bank got is
For administrative services.
for the land bank.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. That's great. So as we move down through the balance sheet, we went through the receivables. With the loan funds I had mentioned earlier, you'll see are the receivables. We have $1.2 million. This is on page 9 at the top in loans receivable from the SBA, and we have $1.292 million receivable from the county fund. So we have the loan fund has $2.5 million in outstanding loans as we speak. And no one really, it gets kind of, I think we've talked about how to market this, but all of the great things we do is overshadowed by how many small businesses we've helped over the years with over $5 million in loans to 280 small businesses in the county, which with only 1,800 businesses in the county, we've had a true impact, but it's more personal to the company that you lend the money to, not the general public. Our fixed assets remain stable, other than if we, I think there was an increase, from the previous year, there were some year-end adjustments based on the calculations for amortization of assets and depreciation. The Commerce Land account should have been zeroed out. As we go down, we have our security deposit here. We are going to have the chairman sign the lease extension that has been approved by the board at our last meeting. The right of use asset is simply a bookkeeping requirement. Accounting rules. Our allowance for bad debt, I always try to put something in there. Again, it's $295,000. If we have to write off a loan and you don't have a sufficient dollar amount in those accounts, whether it's an SBA loan or a CEDC loan, you have to subtract the write-off against it. And if you don't have enough in there, it becomes a hit to your income. So, we've tried in the year that you wrote off the loan. So we try to put a little bit in there each year so that you're not in a situation where you're affecting your P&L at the end of a year because of write-offs. At the same time, the accountants get a little antsy if you put too much in there. So we work with them on that. On the liability side, our accounts payable are just an ordinary course of business. We do have a line item in there due to chamber. When we get paid by the county, we give them, we take our 20,000 off and prorate it and give them a quarter of $65,000. We book it as if it's due each month and quarter. And so if when the county money comes in, we clear that. So that'll get cleared in the next in the July numbers. Other accrued expense relate to family leave, retirement, sick pay, vacation, and our accrual on our EIDL loan. We did take an emergency impact disaster loan of $100,000 during COVID. It is a 30-year loan at 2.75%, but we're paying it down on a 5-year schedule. We didn't know at that time that there would be PPP2. We had PPP1, and that because the county cut our appropriation by 20%, they cut every county department. And, we never used the proceeds of the EIDL loan, but it gave us a backstop that we wouldn't have to lay anyone off in 2022 if there hadn't been a PPP2. So we decided that we would pay it off over a 5-year period, even though we had the cash to pay it off with at 2.75%. But we're religiously paying that down. I know there are a lot of discussion in the financial press about people who took large amounts of money and are not able to pay it down. So our total assets are just under $5 million. On the liability side, we did get down to the accrued interest. The deferred revenue looks to be excessive, $564,000, but you have to remember we've got 450 of it are those grants that may get converted to loans. And so when you're looking at what are the real deferred income, it's $6,200 left in the Columbia Forward Grant Program, which Martha and Steve continue to deplete each time we do a loan that is eligible for that grant, and that will ultimately go away. The half year of Columbia Forward, half of the $65,000 and the 20 on top, and $25,000 on the housing initiative. What had happened was the housing initiative, we didn't hire Chris till January of 2023. And there was a payment provided for in that agreement as a startup payment in December of 2022 of $25,000. So I put that 25 in the deferred income again. So I'm building capacity to ensure that there's a runway for the housing program. So if we get the additional 45, we have 9 months more than a year and a half that's there. And the county is really, really pleased with it from both sides of the political aisle. Our long-term liability is the $72,000 on the EIDL. The accountants have to come up with a lease liability. I'm sure that number will pump up when we show them the new lease schedule. And then the other big long-term liability is the $1,338,000 that we owe the SBA. Again, it shows down at the bottom that we have net restricted assets, and we have total equity of $2.79 million. So it's a strong balance sheet. I know that was a lot of detail, but I know we have 2 new board members, relatively new board members, and a chart I can share with you that shows year over year for 10 years, and it's pretty flat in terms of it's grown, but it's stable month to month. Any questions on the balance sheet? A little quicker for you on the P&L. We misjudged some of the timing on the P&L, so we are $17,000 below budget on administrative revenue. And basically, it's because of the fact that our IDA fee is a fixed fee up to $12,500 a year, plus 10% of any deals that they close. And there's been some delay both at the Hudson IDA and delay at the county IDA and deals that we had budgeted for. I'm fairly confident that we will meet those budget numbers by the end of the year. There are several projects in the hopper at the city IDA that will more than cover what we had budgeted for both of them. And we do have some activity at the county IDA. The Office of Community Grant Administration, we do have fees that we have not collected against Return Brewery. And we are looking at doing another project with farm housing. we had done a project for Kleinkill Farm back in a year and a half ago. It enabled them to build a new, they bought a prefab building from Alvarez, and they now have 12 farm workers that live there. And that was really money from COVID, because they wanted people to have accommodations where they weren't all bunked house. So these are nicer living accommodation. On the Columbia County relationship, we're down $7,000 off budget because again, we were kind of in limbo on funding the broadband, but with a $150,000 grant, $75,000 a year for 2 years, we'll get that resolved. On grant income, we have given out $19,600 in Columbia Forward grants, and as we give out those grants and expense them, we convert deferred income from our deferred income account over to cover those expenses. Suppose we could have put all of that money in income in the beginning, but then it'd be hard to track as to you'd be mixing and matching, and at the end you wonder, did you really spend everything that you were supposed to in that bucket, or did you spend more? You see income from the Grant Land Trust. That's an agreement we have with the city of Hudson. They needed to apply, they wanted to apply for a grant for their Trillium Land Trust, which is going to become countywide. But 36 hours before the grant was due, they came to us and they said, it has to, only a not-for-profit can apply for it. The city government can't. And they had to set up their not-for-profit. So did this, and it's a fiscal agency agreement that was signed, and as though we take in that income, and then as their invoices come in related to their legal fees, their insurance, other costs they have with setting up their own not-for-profit, we won't be playing that role for them. We've also played that role for the town of Stockport with a $5,000 grant that you'll see in the July numbers, and then a $5,000 grant that the group that does the Bangladesh Festival in Hudson received from Galvin. And again, they sign a fiscal agency agreement, and the accountants don't give me too much grief if it's in and out in a year. We started this long before I came with the Lincoln Funeral Train organization that was started up in New Lebanon. And they were raising money, and because they were only doing it for a single purpose, they wouldn't have had the time or justify the expense of setting up their own not-for-profit. But we try not to act as a fiscal agent for anything that's long-term or more than $5,000 or $10,000. As you can see, as we go down, bank interest is a little higher than we had budgeted at 15.2. Our loan interest is $7,200 more than we had budgeted, which will bring us almost $115,000 for the year. And Steve and Martha are putting more money on the street at a greater pace. And again, if you take that $57,000 out, we would have a loss, which is why we're draining cash out of the operating account, because we're putting that money back into a different bank account. So we're not losing money on an enterprise basis, but on a cash flow basis with the allocation of something we continue to monitor. Memberships and sponsorships, we're ahead for the year. That'll average out, and I do think Riley and I have had some discussions about being in a position to have the membership campaign really start in September, so that it's more like a true fundraising campaign than just sending out letters on November 15th. It's been difficult for us. I think people in the know that we're getting $500,000 from the county. And the other people are smaller and joining the chamber, and we're not here to compete with the chamber. So I think there is an opportunity to identify a core group that can get us to the $50,000 to $75,000 a year membership level, because it is important that we demonstrate to the county that we're not totally reliant on county appropriations and funds. Our other income, $3,900. It's a variety of fees and things that some of our home clients pay. There was some other small items. I guess the Bangladesh grant is on here, and as is the Maston Park grant, which is the Stockport grant. On our SBA microloan program, so we are accruing based on the annual contract. The annual contract runs from July 1 to June 30th. And we received a minor decrease, Martha?
Yeah.
Like $7,000.
I think it was 10.
10. So our total income is $51,000 more than budgeted. On the expense side, we continue to do well. I think everything is under budget except we were $3,000 over budget on the annual meeting. And only other category where we're over budget is in grant expense, about 2/3 of the way down, page 12, for Columbia County grant expense of $19,000 we hadn't budgeted for, and the $5,000 for the Bangladesh we hadn't budgeted for, but we had cash that came in to cover that. We are a little bit over on micro enterprise, but that balances out at the end of the year because we make sure we draw down the full amount of the SBA grant. And we did have additional seminars and workshops related to the $300,000 grant we received from the state for purposes of providing small businesses with up to $25,000 grants. And we'll ask Martha to give a quick report on that. Our new initiatives, we're down $13,000 overall. You can see it includes broadband, the climate forum, setting up the land trust, which we will be reimbursed by the county once we get that set up, because those were out-of-pocket expenses. And then we did spend $3,500 applying for a USDA grant, and that was for Brian Swag to do the grant application. And Martha and I keep asking each other, have we heard about it? And have we heard anything from them? And why is it taking so long? But so we're under budget on new initiatives. Our office expense overall, we're under by $1,100, and we're on target with our interest expense. Our professional fees are on target, although legal fees are below budget. We did have a small override on accounting and audit fees, and we're $1,000 under budget on public relations. So I want to thank the staff. I mean, we're pretty, we're lean and mean in terms of spending money. There's no, if you pull discretionary spending out of this, you wouldn't be talking $50,000 in a $1.2 million budget. Brian and I did talk about the fact that for our next meeting, we'll have a 3 to 5 year budget plan for you. I think it's important because of succession transition, need to fill some existing staff positions, and the uncertainty of the how we replace the ARPA money that the county won't have available to provide after the end of this year. If they contract for it by the end of this year, they can disperse it, but it has to be contracted this year. I included something new for this report based on the auditor's comments. I think they wanted you to look at every transaction, but on page 17, Kat put this together for me, and basically we took all of our vendors and we sorted it by the total 6-month column, and you can see that I'm your largest vendor as a consultant as opposed to an employee. UHY is next. Our rent is after that. We do spend about $2,500 average on credit card. April was high because of the annual meeting expenses. And then in column 2, I tried to put what these vendors do for us. So you can see technical assistance, you've got the broadband consulting, TechBridge is our IT service provider, and accounting, legal, technical assistance, our loan software, and basically the majority insurance. Basically our largest bulk of our vendors for 6 months are under $2,500, and in fact half of them are under $1,000. If you have any questions about an individual vendor as to what we do with them, just let me know. And I don't really think it's necessary unless you would like to see it. The actual check register for each of these. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, but we're certainly willing to be as transparent as realistic and practical for you.
Just need transparency then. Why did this come about? I can say they've been on a couple boards. I've never had to see a
public
vendor detail like this before.
Well, in auditors who are also doing government entities, they have to pass a resolution at every board meeting to pay the bills, and they get a list of open payables.
Okay.
And right down to $20 at the post office. So I think when some of the younger auditors, because they think we are a quasi-government entity,
right?
Are you guys approving the bills? And I've gone online when we've been looking at best practices and other people's websites, and the Warren County Economic Development Organization has the bills approved. Well,
transparency.
I can't tell a vendor that he's got to wait. Oh, we didn't have a quorum this month. So I mean, the ordinary course of business. I think the real test is, and I want to go back and do this, and I will. I should have done it before the meeting. But if I go up to, is everyone above $5,000 someone that you approved? Right, because my spending ability, but it's my contract, UHY, the landlord. The credit card isn't breaks down. Martha, do we have contracts with the technical assistant?
Yeah, we do. We have a
so I do think that transparency is important, but I think if the true test is when you get down and you look at reimbursement of expenses. Martha, Martha was $100 a month if you want to average her, pick on her, but that was travel mileage, right, at 65 cents a mile. Chris had some mileage because of going to conferences. In 6 months, I had $232 of reimbursable expenses. And, I'm very comfortable that, you always are going to retain someone to do some work or buy something that doesn't work. But that even is minimal here. Sometimes you hire a consultant and you thought you'd get more out of them than you did. You cut them off, but you've already paid something to them. But I'm happy to go through any individual vendor. And I'm happy to sort this again by the purpose, because then you might see how many technical assistant grants we have or contractors we have, and the like. I think if we go to page, we don't have the that's the next sheet. Pass this out. This is a report that Steve does, and it shows the complexity of the loan program because we're operating in 7 or 8 buckets of SBA funding. And the first column is sum of approved loans, what has been dispersed, some of the principal payments, and then the principal balance. So of all the loans on our books, they initially on the day they were all aggregated on the day they were made. We made 3.6 million, and we have 2.5 outstanding. So over $1 million has been paid back. And 04, tranche 04, Martha, would go back what, 5 or 6 years?
Oh, at least.
Yeah. But the key to all of this is there's 7 delinquent loans, and they total. We could probably write off the 24 cents for the person. They total under $2,000, and it's a testament not only to the counseling and technical assistance and nurturing that Steve and Martha and the team that they have put in place does, but also I think it shows the gratitude of the borrower because they pay us first. One, I think it's because the dollar amount is smaller, so that they owe you somebody $3,000, if they can clean up their $239 loan. But and second, I think it's the loyalty factor that we help them when they needed the help the most. Included in the packet, which is also needed for approval, is our 990. I explained to Brian, basically all the UK UHY. I'm old enough to have known her about kind of well. UHY's financial statement data put into the 990 form. We're getting it now because it's not due till October, but it's the sooner you get it done, and actually not due till November 15th. It does just recalibrates our financial statement. It does show it. It's useful because it shows it in a different format. If you go down to line 12, you'll see in 2023 we had $1,130,000 in revenue. This year we had, in 2022 we had $1,130,000. This in 2023 we had $1,181,000. And on the expense side, we had $1,149,000 and we had $1,165,000. So I mean, I think the budgeting is tight and the management of it is tight. I think one of the things that it does show, which is all very, it's also interesting, is it does show grants, so that you can pull out the grants that we go to page 42 of the packet. You can see where we are getting $710,000 last year from the county and $250,000 from the SBA, and we're getting about $100,000 in interest payments between the banks and the loan funds. So you can see that we are heavily reliant on almost $1 million of the $1,180,000 is government funding. Not uncommon, but demonstrates why we work so closely to respond. I tell people we work for the board of directors and the board of supervisors. Our governance leadership and our major clients. If there's no questions on the 990, I recommend, Mr. Chairman, that you approve it to recommend to the full board for approval and filing with the IRS.
Just point of clarification, although they don't provide an opinion on the 990, UHY prepares / reviews the 990, and they're comfortable with everything included. And for those unfamiliar with the 990, I would definitely say post approval, take a look at it. This is publicly available government document that I know in my line of business, people tend to look at a lot, just by way of virtue of the operations of the corporation.
Well, if someone's gonna give us a loan, they come in and look at the fact that 80% of your revenue comes from government, but they might not give you a. And the best part, it shows that each of you contribute half an hour a week to this organization, and you get no pay.
Lisa, are there two approvals necessary, the financials and the 990?
Yes.
Okay, so on the financials, which Mike reviewed, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. And on the filing of the 990, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Okay, I think the only thing left is the portfolio report.
I have to run out on you guys because I have to go to the workforce
Board meeting?
quarter, yeah,
Oh, good.
so I gotta get there and I'll see you guys
Thank you.
next week.
Thank you.
See it.
I'll see some of you on Monday.
Right. Yeah, well, thank you, Brian. Mike went over this briefly. The loan client A is in arrears, and they have been in arrears for a long time. I think it's important to remember that the original loan amount is $60,000. We modified the loan earlier this year, and they have a balance of $33,000, and they have promised us a payment. Loan client B, they made a payment. Loan client C is in arrears, but we're in communications with her. Loan client D, they also made a payment, and loan client E is in arrears, but he makes a payment every month. I'm not sure when he'll get caught up, but he has been responsive. Are there any questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Two things we're working on. One is upgrading our phone system. The company we had doubled the price, basically. And we're now looking at voice over data, or data over voice. How does it work? Voice over data. Voice over data. It's up. Rachel would have had to have stepped out anyway because we have a quote from Mid-Hudson, and we do have a quote from the incumbent who now offers voice over data, but their analog system is, they're just trying to price it at a point to force you out. But they're comparable. They're like $28 a month difference, but when I went online to see what we're paying for our internet, it's about $32 less than advertised by Mid-Hudson. So I think we're getting a deal here on, and I get to look at it relationship wise, and do we want to do even if it was $20 more a month, would you go local anyway? But we'll bring that, I think that because Rachel's on the board, we should bring that probably to the full board. And it is worth $5,000 on a contract basis. The other thing we're struggling with is the going to the cloud. Steve has done tremendous work on both these projects, and our current provider, we have to sit down with him. He's got a price for the conversion from our existing system to the cloud of $20,000. At best, we have $5,000 from the other quote that we have, and the third quote, we were out of their league. So it wasn't, and the fourth quote we had, we didn't think they could handle the type of routine calls that we were going to need. I don't want to go with the lower price, even though they're a well-qualified company, and find out that they didn't fully understand what was involved. So I think we want to have them come down and physically look at the server, look at the files, and not come to us halfway through and say, oh, gee, I didn't know we had it set up like this. I thought it was a simple setup. On the flip side, I want to give the other person the chance to explain what are we missing here in terms of what you're doing. And you're not going to get to do this every 5 to 7 years because there's no more servers. That's what we're doing here. I just want to be sure that we're fair with someone who's provided us service for how long, Lisa? 25 years?
Almost as long as it's been here.
Yeah. And at the same time, I don't have any reason to believe it's not a accurate price, but the differential is so large that we have to understand, are they looking at two different products or two different levels of service? I think, Steve, on the monthly ongoing service, they're about the same, right?
They're similar scope, yes.
And we found this with the copier. I mean, one the lease payment was $8 more, but the copiers were 1/4 cent less. I mean, it's a commodity at a certain level, but setting it up, we can't afford to come in and find out that we don't have access to the files in a fashion that allows us to continue to use them the way we knew them. Epic, right? You're going through that in healthcare. So I had hoped to bring something to you on that, but I was away and Steve had gotten all the data, but I do think we need to sit down and almost shake the low price one and say, do you know, it just makes you wonder when the price is that different. Anything else that the committee has?
I think just one thing from an administrative standpoint, I just think we need a motion and a second to approve the portfolio.
Oh, okay, yeah. Entertain a motion on the loan portfolio. Second. Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
No public
Mike, do you
comment?
want to talk about the next loan?
Oh, yeah, you want to draw down?
Yeah, so I don't need approval to draw down the balance of the $775,000 loan that we have from the SBA. That's just the balance remaining. But we think, depending on our loans in the pipeline, we may go through that in the next 2 to 3 months. So we are looking for approval to request another loan from the SBA, and we're thinking we'll request $1 million this time. So even though we won't be making that application probably for a couple of months, we just want to get the committees informed and bring it to the full board this month.
And we'll take it to the loan committee first and then bring it back to you.
So just to round out the discussion, so there's how much money already loaned right now outstanding? 2.5.
Correct.
There's 770
300, well, there's 300 in the SBA account.
sitting there in cash
Well, there's to lend.
to be loaned.
And we have another
There's 775,000 available.
250.
250 is what's remaining from that loan.
700, that's the original.
775,000 was the amount approved, and we've already.
We took it down in $250,000 trust.
So what's the request then?
Well, I think what we want, Martha is advising us that she is, because there's only $350,000 of SBA money left to lend,
On the balance sheet.
that she's going to, and she's got some of that committed tentatively with loan committee approval, that she's going to draw down the remaining 250. That will get her out to December.
Or November even.
But the process of applying for more money from the SBA is a 2 or 3 month process. So she's going to ask for approval to submit a request to the SBA for our revolving loan fund tranche 11 in the amount of $1 million. It was $750 the last time.
That was gonna be my next question. So like normally, how much is the application for?
Well, we've done 250, then 500. What we're finding is to be more efficient,
Definitely.
that it's better to ask them for more and have them tell you can only have 700.
Got it.
I think they'll be approved for $1 million. As far as I know, they have the money available. And we had thought the 775 would last us for 2+ years, and it hasn't.
And again, I think we have to be careful here because with potential change in administrations, the SBA is not necessarily although you would think small business would be a group that a particular political bent would be supportive of, hasn't been in the past. You know, we almost, the technical assistance money, when they were trying to do the budget deficit cap lifting, they tried to close that whole program down.
So just because you're going up doesn't mean that you think it's guaranteed the following.
No, my point is if we get $1 million now and that you go have the next 4 years, you might not get any. So
It's not guaranteed.
get as much as you can while it's available. Because we manage it properly. And, we're at a size now where you could run a small loan program outside of an organization. You wouldn't have the mission and the contacts, but it could be a standalone division within the organization.
So do we want to have the finance committee bless the,
$1 million ask, so you can at least have that to talk with Keith?
We'll be asking the full board for a resolution.
Why don't we go to the loan committer first?
Yeah. You haven't gone to the loan committee
No,
first.
just
I was
Monday.
just going all the way back to the beginning of the charter. I don't necessarily see powers of the finance committee being
I
associated.
think we had done 250, then we went to 500, then we went to 750. And part of it is Martha has such wonderful relationships with the people in Washington that approve it. You don't know when they're going to, get a promotion or retire. And so I think, and because you can draw it down as needed over a 2-year period?
2 years, and you can request an extension.
Yeah. So.
There was a period where we had to request an extension, a very slow period, but,
So do you anticipate that going to last a year or two?
well, we're thinking to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have some control over that. We have the CEDC loan fund, we can.
See, the issue with the SBA is with the CEDC loan fund, when people pay you back, you have it to lend to someone else. When the SBA loan pays you back, you pay the SBA back and you keep the net.
Yeah.
So if you can't keep getting the money, and
Right.
I think too, if you go through a pattern where you've been getting money and then all of a sudden you stop for a year and a half, they think you're out of the market.
Yep.
So thank you all.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.